Pulled over in Puerto Rico.
He probably seen this motherfucking rental car thing, one of us, didn't he?
No, he seen 3 niggas.
Heard about 4 or 5 gunshots. Then I seen them running across my yard into a car, and they took off. They tried to revive him, and his kids are out there crying.
One of the most senseless acts of violence that I've reached and have seen this year.
This is Kori Warren, a 39-year-old father from Ferguson, Missouri, who would be shot through his own front door after doing what any parent would do, protecting his child. On July 8, 2025, police found him dead inside his home, glass shattered across the floor where the shooter had fired straight through the entrance. But this wasn't a random act of violence or a robbery gone wrong. This was a father being silenced for refusing $12,000 in cash to drop charges against the man who had violated his young daughter. But before we get to the shocking details of how this murder was orchestrated, the family connections that made it possible, and the burned vehicle that held the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy, let me take you back to March 21st, 2025, where this nightmare truly began. Kori Warren was everything you'd want in a neighbor and a father. He lived on Bayview Drive in Ferguson, Missouri, as an African-American homeowner who took pride in his property and his community. His best friend described him as someone who felt like a brother, calling him the best person on earth. Neighbors remember him as a super nice guy who would mow their lawns without asking for payment.
Real good dad. You know, I couldn't ask for a better neighbor.
Who brought Thanksgiving dinners to those living nearby, who simply showed up and made life better for everyone around him. He was a father of at least 2 children, doing his best to raise them right in a community that was still healing from its own painful history. Ferguson, Missouri had become a household name back in 2014 after the Michael Brown incident, and the community had worked hard to rebuild trust and move forward. Kori was part of that effort, the quiet work of being a good neighbor, a present father, someone who showed up every single day to make his corner of the world a little bit better. But on March 21st, 2025, Kori's daughter was walking home from her school bus stop when she encountered a man named Lavor Harmon. According to charging documents, Harmon exchanged phone numbers with the minor, and what happened next would tear this family apart. Harmon later picked up this young one, took her shopping, and then brought her to a nearby home where he wrongly moved to her. On May 19, 2025, approximately 2 months after the incident, Kori walked into the Ferguson Police Department and reported what had happened to his daughter. Kori gave a statement and provided details. He became a witness in a criminal case against Lavor Harmon, who was subsequently charged with 4 counts of gross misconduct against a young girl. Kori was standing up for his daughter, seeking accountability through the legal system, trusting that justice would be served. But what Kori didn't know was that by becoming a witness and refusing to stay silent about what had been done to his child, he had just painted a target on his own back. 10 days after he made that police report, after he stood up and said, "This man hurt my daughter and he needs to face consequences," visitors showed up at his door with an offer that was designed to make all of this go away. On May 29, 2025, just days after Kori filed his police report, Lavonda Harmon, the sister of the accused offender, traveled from Houston, Texas to Ferguson, Missouri. She didn't come alone because she arrived with an unnamed man whose identity the police know but have chosen not to publicly release, and together they knocked on Kori Warren's front door with $12,000 in cash and a simple proposition. Lavonda Harmon stood there at Kori Warren's home and offered him $12,000 to withdraw his testimony, to let her brother walk away from the statutory charges, to abandon his daughter's chance at justice. And Kori said no. But in making that choice, in standing firm on his principles, Kori unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that would cost him everything. Because according to prosecutors, that refusal prompted a conspiracy to eliminate Kori as a witness. When Lavonda Harmon couldn't buy Kori's silence, her brother Lavor Harmon, along with his uncle Anthony L. Young and his father Anthony D. Young, allegedly began planning something far more permanent. They needed Kori Warren gone and his testimony to disappear. and they needed someone willing to pull the trigger. This was where Andrew Klaus, a 31-year-old man described as an associate of Harmon and his family members, entered the situation. Klaus wasn't a stranger to the Harmons. He wasn't some random hired gun they found off the street, because he was connected to them and was someone they believed would do what needed to be done and keep his mouth shut afterward.
But what Klaus probably didn't realize was that the people who hired him had already decided he was disposable, that his usefulness would end the moment Kori Warren took his last breath. The morning of July 8, 2025 started like any other morning on Bayview Drive in Ferguson, but around midday, everything changed. Hugh Dubberly, Kori's neighbor, was home when he heard the sound of 4 or 5 gunshots ringing out. Hugh looked out and saw figures running across his yard, scrambling into a vehicle, fleeing the scene with the kind of desperate speed that only comes when you know you've just done something terrible. The vehicle was a white Kia, and it tore away from Bayview Drive, while behind them, chaos erupted. Because Andrew Klaus had approached Kori Warren's home and fired multiple shots through the glass front door. He simply walked up to that door and opened fire, shattering the glass and ending the life of a father who had done nothing wrong except stand up for his child. Emergency responders arrived to find Kori Warren dead inside his home, broken glass scattered across the entrance where the bullets had torn through. But outside, the scene was even more heartbreaking. Kori's children were there, crying, watching as paramedics tried desperately to revive their father, witnessing the aftermath of violence that never should have touched their lives. But while Ferguson police were responding to the murder on Bayview Drive, another crime scene was developing across town in North St. Louis, because just hours after Andrew Klaus shot Kori Warren, Klaus himself was found dead. His body was discovered in the city, and suddenly, investigators weren't dealing with one murder anymore. They were dealing with 2. The timing wasn't coincidental. Prosecutors believed that Klaus was killed by the very people who had orchestrated Kori Warren's murder, that LaVar Harmon and the Young family members decided their shooter had become a liability. Klaus knew too much. He could testify or cut a deal with prosecutors.
Tonight we are getting answers about what led to 2 separate murders in July, one in Ferguson, the other in North City.
As First Alert 4's Lena Chappie reports, police now say it's all tied to a murder for hire in an attempt to unravel another crime.
I try to forget, but I can't. You know, it keeps coming back to haunt me.
Hugh Dubberly remembers the day well.
This is tragic. I didn't think nothing like this would happen in this neighborhood.
Speaking about his neighbor,
He was a really good guy. I miss him a whole lot.
Kori Warren was shot and killed in his home off Bayview Drive in Ferguson in July. On Wednesday, the St. Louis County prosecutor announced charges to these 3, LaVar Harmon, Anthony Young, and Anthony Young, now charged with 10 counts in connection to the murder of Kori.
First 6 charges are 2 counts of murder in the first degree, 2 counts of armed criminal action, 1 count of knowingly exploding or burning, and 1 count of tampering with physical evidence.
Investigators say this stems from an attempt to bribe Warren to drop charges in a criminal case where LaVar Harmon was accused of sexually assaulting Kori's daughter.
LaVonda Harmon, the sister of LaVar Harmon, and another individual attempted to bribe Kori Warren, a witness in that pending case. She attempted to bribe the witness with about $12,000.
After Kori refused,
He tried to do the right thing by reporting a rape, and he got killed for it.
investigators say Harmon and his co-conspirators came up with a plan to kill Kori.
On July 8th of this year, Kori Warren was shot and killed by Andrew Klaus at his home in Ferguson, Missouri. Andrew Klaus was later killed that same day.
Klaus's body was later found in North City, and now investigators say they believe these 3 men planned these murders by acting together.
And then there was the white Kia.
the vehicle that neighbors had seen fleeing Bayview Drive after the shooting. Law enforcement found it, but not in any condition that would help them immediately. The car had been set on fire, badly burned, in what prosecutors would later charge as knowingly exploding or burning in an attempt to destroy evidence, to eliminate any forensic traces that might connect the vehicle to the murders and the conspiracy that had put all of this in motion.
And somewhere, LeVar Harmon, Anthony L. Young, and Anthony D. Young believed they had gotten away with it, that by eliminating both the witness and the shooter, they had successfully buried the truth along with Kori Warren's body. But they had severely underestimated the determination of law enforcement to bring them to justice. What happened next was a symphonic multi-agency collaboration and relentless investigative work. The Ferguson Police Department didn't treat this as just another homicide, as they knew immediately that Kori Warren's murder was connected to the assault case, that this was witness intimidation taken to its most extreme conclusion. And they knew that solving this case would require resources beyond what any single department could provide. Because what happened to Kori Warren wasn't entirely unprecedented, as horrifying as that reality is to acknowledge. Cases where witnesses or family members are murdered in retaliation for reporting assault represent a rare but deeply disturbing pattern in the American justice system. In 1997, 19-year-old Rachel Timmerman disappeared just days before she was scheduled to testify against Marvin Charles Gabrion II, the man she'd accused of touching her. Her body was found 2 months later in Oxford Lake, bound with chains, locks, and concrete blocks. She had drowned while still alive, and her 11-month-old daughter vanished with her and has never been found. In 2020, 17-year-old Aisha Cowell from Norfolk, Virginia, was reported missing after last being seen entering a vehicle. Her body was discovered weeks later in a wooded area, having been shot multiple times. She was set to testify in an upcoming trial where she was the victim, accusing a man of touching her wrongly earlier that year. Court documents revealed that 3 suspects, including acquaintances of the accused, killed her explicitly to block her testimony.
New details: we've learned 17-year-old Asia Cowell was shot and killed allegedly to stop her from testifying in a rape case. Tonight, 3 people are charged. And we have to warn you, some of the information in the case is difficult to hear and may not be suitable for younger viewers. Thanks for staying with us at 6 o'clock. I'm David Allen.
And I'm Janet Roach. All of this information coming from court documents against the 2 women and a man accused in the case. Allison Basil breaks down these new developments.
It's a case that makes your head spin. Police reports reveal that Asia Cowell's death was deliberate and calculated, and it all started here at the Archers Green Apartments.
2 weeks after Asia Cowell disappeared from Norfolk, Newport News police found her body with a gunshot wound in the woods off Warwick Boulevard. Wednesday, they arrested 30-year-old Crystal Albritton and 18-year-old Deja Feaster. A day later, 38-year-old Devin Albritton was arrested. All are charged with first-degree murder. Newport News and Norfolk police worked together on this case over the last 3 months. What they discovered was a strategically planned murder. Police reports in the court documents reveal Feaster said Cowell was a victim in a pending case against her brother, Deshaun Coram. Investigators say the women lured Cowell to the apartment. They drove her to Newport News at gunpoint. There in the woods, Albritton shot Cowell after Feaster took too long. Devin Albritton stayed in Norfolk to get rid of Cowell's phone. Back in May, court documents show Cowell's aunt filed a protection order against Coram. She said Coram threw her niece against a wall, choked her, and threw her on the floor. Coram was charged with rape. However, the Norfolk Commonwealth's Attorney's Office tells us the case was dismissed on September 29th after Cowell died. A spokesperson for Cowell's family said in a statement that they are overjoyed to hear of the arrests, saying, quote, "We would like to thank the diligent and hardworking law enforcement officials of the Newport News Police Department and the Norfolk Police Department. We would also like to thank the Hampton Roads community."
Devin Albritton and Deja Feaster head to court in February. Crystal Albritton has a court date December 17th. In Norfolk, Allison Basil, 13 News Now.
And then there's the case of Army Specialist Vanessa Gillen, who disappeared from Fort Hood, Texas in April 2020 after reporting bodily harassment. Her dismembered remains were found 2 months later, buried in concrete near the Leon River. A fellow soldier had bludgeoned her with a hammer and enlisted his girlfriend to help dispose of her body, all because she had dared to speak up about misconduct. These cases aren't isolated incidents. They're data points in a much larger, much more terrifying pattern. Research from the National Institute of Justice indicates that witness intimidation is a major problem in 51% of large United States jurisdictions, with forms ranging from verbal threats to physical harm.
In cases involving sexual violence, where the crimes are deeply personal and often involve people known to the victims, intimidation affects up to 75% of cases in high-risk areas. And here's the most chilling statistic of all. Only about 31% of assaults are reported to police, and fear of retaliation is cited in 29% of decisions not to report. People like Kori Warren, people who stand up and say this happened and I'm not staying silent, are already in the minority. And when they're killed for that courage, when their determination to seek justice costs them their lives, it sends a message that echoes far beyond their individual cases. So they brought in everyone. The investigation spanned 4 months and involved the Ferguson Police Department, St. Louis County Police, St. Louis City Police, the FBI, and the United States Attorney's Office.
One of the most senseless acts of violence that I've reached and have seen this year.
Ferguson Police Chief Troy Doyle didn't mince words when describing the case, and he made it clear that his department, along with their law enforcement partners, would not rest until everyone responsible was held accountable. Captain Tim Harris, who heads the Ferguson Detective Bureau, later spoke about the relentless casework that went into building the case, about the regular meetings with Kori Warren's family to keep them informed, to let them know that their father, their hero, had not been forgotten.
Let me speak directly to the families here. The families of these victims, our hearts are with you. And it was with them in every part of this case.
And on October 29, 2025, nearly 4 months after Kori Warren was murdered, prosecutors announced indictments against 3 men, Lavore Harmon, Anthony L. Young, and Anthony D. Young. The charges were extensive and severe.
New at noon, 3 people face charges today accused of witness tampering and sexual abuse. Thanks for joining us. I'm Paul Cook. Kori Warren was shot and killed in his home in Ferguson in July. Investigators say he refused a bribe to drop charges in a sexual assault case. 5 on your side's Megan Kernan is live at the Ferguson Police Department, where prosecutors just announced the indictments.
That's right, Paul. This case is disturbing on every level. Prosecutors say Kori Warren was murdered because he refused to stay silent, refusing a bribe to drop charges in his daughter's rape case last March. Then just yesterday, 3 men were indicted, all family members, accused of first-degree murder, statutory rape, tampering with physical evidence, and knowingly burning and exploding, among other charges. St. Louis County prosecutors announced indictments against Lavore Harmon, Anthony L. Young, and Anthony D. Young. Investigators say Kori Warren was targeted after he refused a $12,000 bribe to drop charges against Lavore Harmon, who's accused of raping Warren's 15-year-old daughter. Court documents say Harmon's sister, Lavonda Harmon, offered the payoff with the help of 2 others. Days later, police say Warren was shot and killed by Andrew Klaus, who was an associate of these 3 men. Then, in a shocking twist, Klaus was found murdered hours later in St. Louis, and a burned white Kia was linked to the crimes. Prosecutors say all 3 men were working together in both murders. This multi-agency investigation points to a deadly chain of violence tied to the brutal assault.
Each man was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 for Kori Warren and 1 for Andrew Klaus, 2 counts of armed criminal action, 1 count of knowingly exploding or burning connected to the destruction of the white Kia, 1 count of tampering with physical evidence, and Lavore Harmon still faced the original charges related to touching Kori's daughter. The relationship between these 3 men made the conspiracy even more disturbing. Anthony L. Young is Lavore Harmon's uncle. Anthony D. Young is Harmon's father and Anthony L. Young's son. This was a family rallying around one of their own, deciding that protecting an offender was more important than the life of the man whose daughter he had violated.
The pain of these victims, of what they shared, the families of these victims, what they shared, it was always at the forefront.
Assistant Prosecuting Attorney John Schlesinger made it clear during the announcement that all 3 men orchestrated these murders by acting together and with others. They worked as a unit, and now they would face justice together.
New charges today in the murder of a Ferguson man who reported the rape of his own daughter. 3 family members stand indicted for the murder of Kori Warren, who was gunned down after refusing to bribe to drop charges in a assault case. Our Megan Kernan is live outside the Ferguson Police Department, where prosecutors announced indictments just hours ago.
Kori Warren's best friend tells me he was the best person on earth and a great father. His family still hasn't come back home since the killing. And these 3 men are now charged, accused of working together to silence that father, murdering him and then murdering their own hitman.
One of the most senseless acts of violence that I've reached and have seen this year.
Ferguson Police Chief Troy Doyle says Kori Warren's killing was calculated, cruel, and personal. On July 8th, officers say Kori Warren was shot through the glass door of his Ferguson home that you can still see 3 months later.
It's real good, Dad. You know, I couldn't ask for a better neighbor.
Investigators say Warren was after refusing a $12,000 bribe to stay quiet about charges against Lavore Harmon, accused of Warren's daughter. Prosecutors say Harmon, his uncle Anthony L. Young, and cousin Anthony D. Young coordinated Warren's murder with their associate Andrew Klaus, who later that same day was also shot and killed. All 3 men now face 2 counts of first-degree murder, armed criminal action, and felonies like statutory rape.
I would have never thought something like this would happen around here.
Neighbor Hugh Deberly was home the day Warren was killed.
Next thing I know, I heard about 4 or 5 gunshots. Then I seen them running across my yard into a car, and they took off. They tried to revive him, and his kids are out there crying.
Warren's neighbors remember him as a devoted dad and friend.
Well, they took a person's life. You know, a person was trying to do right, and they killed him for it. So they should have to pay too.
Prosecutors said this was not being charged as a for hire plot, but that could change if evidence points to that. Harmon is held on a $2 million bond in St. Louis County, and the Youngs are in federal custody, also on $2 million bonds each.
Each suspect is being held on a $2 million bond. Lavore Harmon sits in St. Louis County custody. The 2 Youngs are in federal custody on unrelated charges, though the specific nature of those federal charges remains undisclosed to the public. Interestingly, prosecutors have stated that while the case is not currently being charged as a murder for hire plot, that classification could change if additional evidence points in that direction.
Prosecutors said this was not being charged as a murder for hire plot, but that could change if evidence points to that. Harmon is held on a $2 million bond in St. Louis County, and the Youngs are in federal custody, also on $2 million bonds each.
The investigation remains ongoing, and as more details emerge about exactly how this conspiracy was planned and executed, the charges could evolve.
Well, they took a person's life. You know, a person was trying to do right, and they killed him for it. So they should have to pay too.
For Kori Warren's family, the indictments bring a measure of accountability but cannot bring back what they've lost. The family has not returned to their home on Bayview Drive since the murder. How could they? How do you walk back into a space where your father's blood was spilled, where he took his last breath, where the glass from the shattered door still serves as a reminder of the violence that destroyed your world? Captain Harris noted that detectives remain in regular contact with the family, that they're doing as well as can be expected given the circumstances.
Glad they caught the people that did it to them, and I hope they pay.
The community response has been one of outrage and grief. Social media posts have framed Kori Warren as a hero, someone who risked everything and ultimately gave everything to stand up for his child. A GoFundMe was created to support the family, though the current status and details of that fundraiser remain limited in public reporting. Kori Warren was laid to rest at Calvary Cemetery and Mausoleum in St. Louis, a final resting place for a man who should still be here, who should still be mowing his neighbors' lawns and bringing over Thanksgiving dinners and watching his children grow up. Instead, he's gone, a victim of a system that failed to protect witnesses who dare to speak truth against those who would rather silence them permanently. As of early 2026, the case remains in pre-trial phases with no major trial updates having surfaced publicly. The legal process moves slowly, but the pain for those left behind is constant and immediate. This case raises urgent questions about witness protection in bodily assault prosecutions, particularly in communities where trust in law enforcement can be fragile and where retaliation against those who cooperate with authorities remains a terrifying possibility. Kori Warren did everything right. He reported the crime, worked with police, and refused to be intimidated, and he paid for that courage with his life. The collaborative law enforcement response demonstrates what's possible when agencies work together with determination and resources, but it also exposes how vulnerable witnesses can be, how quickly intimidation can escalate to lethal violence, and how desperately we need stronger safeguards to protect those who risk everything to seek justice. What do you think about this atrocious case? Let me know in the comments section. Also, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.